we start with? We're going to start, I guess, with the big, beautiful bill, what it means, and what Elon is doing. You will recall earlier this week, there was an article in some schlock of a fake news crap site. I don't know what it was, and I forget what it was offhand, but then it was, as goes the disinformation laundering, although maybe it wasn't disinformation, it gets picked up and repeated by other outlets, and thus a rumor, a disgruntled former friend, or in this particular case, someone who has a company that rivals what Elon Musk is doing. So both disgruntled ex-friend with a competitive business came out and said that Elon is going to do everything he can to get revenge on Donald Trump. I actually want to bring it up just a little bit. Here we go. Politico. I don't remember if it was originally in Politico, but good enough for fake news garbage. He's going to do everything to damage the president. Former Musk friend on the Trump fallout in a rare interview after the Musk-Trump row. Silicon Valley founder Philip Lowe predicts his former friend will seek retaliation against the president. I guess there's no low to which Philip Lowe won't stoop. Sit aside the article. Bottom line of the article is Philip Lowe, who hasn't spoken to Elon in a long time, but had a falling out with Elon when Elon went off and started Neuralink, which apparently competes with Philip Lowe's neurological company. And sure, there's no bad blood there or no reason to try to demonize Elon Musk. But Philip Lowe says Elon's going to go out of his way to seek revenge on Donald Trump because that's what he does when he gets miffed. There is no question that as relates to the big, beautiful bill, which Elon Musk called an abomination, that Elon, in the spat heard round the world, which is going to dovetail into the next subject, the acquittal of P. Diddy, we'll get there. Elon Musk came out after the falling out with him and Trump, where Doge made recommendations, and then Donald Trump came out with the big, beautiful bill, the OBBB. I think it's been renamed now by Chuck, inciting the erection Schumer. Elon was a little pissed that some of his recommendations were not incorporated into the big, beautiful bill, and instead of curbing government spending, the big, beautiful bill increased government spending. Elon Musk called it an abomination, went haywire, et cetera, then put out a tweet, which led to, I say it led to great content, but I don't like seeing this type of fighting, but he put out a tweet that said, paraphrasing, Donald John Trump is on the Epstein list. That's why Patel hasn't released it. Have a nice day, Donald John Trump. And the internet went crazy and went wild. Okay, then there was back and forth. Then Trump says, maybe we should go look into Elon's companies. Elon says, maybe I should pull the Starlink contracts or whatever the spaceship stuff that he's doing for the government. Then you had Steve Bannon saying Trump should come in and nationalize all of Elon Musk's private businesses. The spat lasted about 48 hours. And then Elon said, I regret some of the tweets I made. Donald Trump, everyone seems to have backed off. Okay. Philip Lowe comes in and says now Elon is going to do everything he can to sabotage Trump because that's the type of person he is. Elon has been floating the idea repeatedly of a third party in American politics because he seems to think that if two parties are thoroughly corrupt and inadequate, surely a third one is going to solve the problem. Because after all, if things are broken, just make more of it and it will not be broken. He put out this tweet, when was it, earlier today? Independence Day is the perfect time to ask if you want independence from the two-party, some would say uni-party system. Should we create the American Party? Now, I replied to this tweet. Can you, I don't think I can vote in incognito. I replied to this tweet. It's at least the third time Elon has talked about a third party. And I said the last time, if something is broken, more of a broken thing is not going to fix it. I also said, Elon, you want to know how a multi-party system looks? Look up at Canada and see if that's what you want to emulate. Some people rightly point out a parliamentary system is a little bit different than a presidential system, and so it's not perfectly analogous. Nothing is perfectly analogous because if it were perfectly analogous, it would be identical. But history doesn't repeat, it tends to rhyme. So you want to look at how multi-party systems work or multi-party systems work, depending on where you're from. Look up at Canada, look at Europe, look at a parliamentary system, look at coalition governments, and you will soon find out that when the system is broken to the extent that it is, more of a broken system doesn't fix it. You want to look how an independent additional party works. Now, people are going to call me a hypocrite. I ran for the People's Party of Canada. It's a relatively brand new federal party, started by Maxime Bernier when he said, I've had enough of the corruption of the Conservative Party of Canada. And he started another party. Canada has got the Conservative Party on the right, so-called Conservative Party on the right. It's got the People's Party of Canada on the right. On the left, it's got the Liberals, the NDP, the Green, the Marxist. Who else? You got at least 6 parties in Canada. You know what you have in Canada, Elon? Despite having 6 parties, you still have something of a 2-party system. And you still have something of a 2-party system that people still call a uni-party system. Because when you got the Conservatives voting on conversion therapy bans where you can no longer talk so-called trans kids out of being trans, unanimously voting for that, it's not obvious that we don't have a uni-party system. When you've got pictures of Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, dressed in Ukrainian garb, and you've got the Justin Trudeau dressed in Ukrainian garb, saying Slava Ukraini, it's not clear that you don't have a one-party, uni-party system in Canada, despite having 6 parties. Even if you don't, you know what you end up having is 2-party system by coalition. No, but Elon's, it's really going to be good. Call it the American Party, start a 3rd party, and it's surely going to work this time. He put out the poll. I actually want to see what the stats on it now are, because it was about 60-40 the last time I checked. Let me see this here. Elon Musk. Here we go. We can go like this. Bring this back here and bring this up. All right, let's see what the poll results are as of now. 62.8 yes, 37.2 no. It's going to be a big poll to try to impact, but that is to say that 60% of Elon Musk's followers, his 221 million followers, 10 million views. How many votes do we have? 500,000 votes. It's not particularly. I think he might want to take an indication from the participation in that poll at the overall opinion of it. Said it the last time he posed this question: if you want to know how a uniparty system works, look at Canada. Do you want America to become Canada? If the system is broken, more of a broken system will not help. But the rumor is, and it's just a rumor as of now, although there's substantiating evidence for the rumor, is that Elon is going to start a 3rd party or announce it the day after the big, beautiful bill should pass, if it does. And now where the heck is that tweet from Elon Musk? Because I know that I had it. I'm going to have to go to my inbox and get it. He put out a tweet that said, if this big, beautiful bill passes, the next day there will be a 3rd party. Oh, here we go, right here. Here. Bring this up, and we'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't know if Donald Trump has signed the bill yet, but if this insane spending bill passes, the America Party will be formed the next day. Our country needs an alternative to the Democrat-Republican Uniparty so that people actually have a voice. Well, you can go look at the success that yet a new party has had in Canada. Although mildly successful, it hasn't impacted politics at all. You want to give people a voice. Sometimes that voice is free speech on the internet so that you can let those politicians know when you are vehemently in disagreement with proposed policy. The one big, beautiful bill really got some staunch reactions on both sides. But that is what Elon is suggesting, that as of tomorrow, to the extent that this bill passes, we might have yet a 3rd party. And then the question is going to be, who on earth is going to be a part of that party? You can think of Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, or maybe not. Maybe Thomas Massey is actually more useful as something of a voice of opposition within the Republican Party. And what you've got to do is just get better candidates and hold them to account, and not start a 3rd party that's just going to fall exactly down the same path as the other 2 broken parties. The voice does not mean getting their way. It means voicing their opposition. And to the extent that we can voice our opposition, whatever opposition that may be, on a free speech platform like Rumble, Chris Pavlovsky, or Twitter, or Truth, that's how you impact change. And at the end of the day, that's also how you avoid total government dysfunction, avoid meaningful vote splitting to the point that it would bring back a Democrat potential majority, and avoid a coalition. Although maybe some people are going to argue a coalition with the Rand Pauls of the world, with the Thomas Masseys, means that the Republican Party would have to give and take a little bit. But it hasn't worked in the past, and more of the same is not going to work in the future. But we'll see what happens with Elon Musk in that poll. But that's where that's at. Now, the question was this. Hold on a second. The one big beautiful bill. I guess we have to segue into that because I'm not going to be the expert on this. Obviously, it's a 900 plus page bill as it is currently passed, and my understanding is it's passed despite some not theatrics, but despite some drama, some infighting. Has Trump signed the big beautiful bill?
There's a live stream a bill signing at 5 p.m.
Well, we're not going to watch that. So there's a live stream bill signing at 5 p.m. That's encrypted for those of you who hear the voice and don't know where it's coming from. AgentGuru_IO on IO, India Oscar on Twitter. So the bill's going to get signed in. It's passed, and Trump's going to sign at 5 o'clock, and he's going to take his victory lap, although some people are going to say it's a compromised victory lap. And what the hell is going on with the big, beautiful bill? I tried to make sense of whatever the most concerning things to me that I tried to make sense of. I listened to Robert Barnes on Bourbon with Barnes last night on our vivabarneslaw.locals.com community. And I think the consensus is that nobody is ecstatic with the big, beautiful bill, but it's a necessary evil as a reconciliation bill to get to the next stage of government. It's the necessary step so that Trump can now have the leeway to get things done in terms of foreign policy that were hitherto being held up by threats, political intimidation of not supporting or not passing the big, beautiful bill. The biggest thing out of it is that Trump is going to get to say now that tax cuts are... in as much as they can be written in stone, the tax cuts are in. The no tax on tips is in a certain iteration. No tax on tips is in, except in as much as it's an end of the year deduction and not something that is immediately not taxable, which raises its own concerns, but it's in. And so it's going to be the W, it's going to be the satisfying election promises. What I found concerning is the talking point that you've seen literally everybody on the left, talking about. If you just go and put in 17 million in the Twitter search engine. Let me just see this here. You go put in the word 17 million and you'll see what the new talking point is. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Okay, well, we're going to get here. Gavin Newsom. 17 million people just lost health care. My assessment, false. 18 million kids just lost school meals. False. Here we go. Oh, we got Bonchi says, Democrats keep claiming 17 million people are getting kicked off Medicaid. Notice they never define who those people are. There's a reason for that. We're going to get into it. Jason Ray, 17 million people just lost healthcare. I mean, they're just repeating the same crap over and over again. Put in the word 17 or 18 million, depending on who you're listening to. Here we go. This isn't about you. This is about the 17 million Americans whose health insurance you're taking away. And after you turned your back on them to vote yes, whatever. This is from AOC. Tony Schaefer. Who's this guy? Let's see here. New York Times, best-selling author. New York Times, 800,000 children in the hospital. New York Times. New York Times, Israel just bombed a hospital in Gaza. New York Times. The pathological liars throughout history. Go read Rinsberg. The Gray Lady Winks. Amazing. Documents all of the New York Times, not just getting it wrong, getting it inverted to reality over the last 100 plus years. New York Times. I was one of the more than 17 million Americans who lost their effective, reasonably priced healthcare when Vodka Nancy. Hold on, maybe this isn't. That's not the right one then. That's not the right one. Oh, here we go. In response to Elizabeth Warren. No one voted to kick 17 million people off their healthcare. No one voted to raise the cost of groceries. No one voted to give handouts to billionaires. Donald Trump, yada, yada. So try to make sense of the 17 million. First of all, the question is how much is being cut from Medicaid and over what period of time? The answer to that question is roughly $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And that amounts to roughly 15% of Medicaid. How is it being cut? To the best of my ability to make sense of this. Democrats claiming that the one big beautiful bill, an estimated 17 million will lose their health insurance. Projection stems from various analyses, according to the news. Medicaid cuts, OBBB, would significantly reduce federal Medicaid spending by imposing measures like work requirements for certain adult enrollees, which are expected to lead to coverage losses. Congressional Budget Office estimates has estimated that the OBB would result in substantial decrease in Medicaid enrollment, with one estimated at a loss of 10 million people by 2034. Affordable Care Act, in addition to Medicaid, changes to the Affordable Care Act, health insurance, yada, 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 are expected to lead to the refusal to extend subsidies for these plans or to loss of coverage. Impact on vulnerable populations. Democrats highlight the potential impact on vulnerable populations, including low-income families, people with disabilities, seniors who rely on Medicaid. The major issue about this is that they're imposing work requirements potentially for some for Medicaid. They want to filter off some of the fraud and abuse of Medicaid. And the amazing thing is this, it's predicated on the idea that you can never reduce, remove, or eliminate a government subsidy. And, it's something I don't know if I was the original. I don't know if it's been said before, but, at first, charity is unexpected. You're grateful for it. Then it becomes sort of routine. Then it becomes an expectation. And then it becomes a demand. And the idea that you can't reduce Medicaid to at least filter out the fraud, or at least ensure that people who are on it are making attempts to get off of it, this is Bernie Sanders' breadlines being a good thing. You create dependency, and you create an entire population, subset of population, many of whom are illegal, that are entirely dependent on it for your own political profit. And so when they accuse the Republicans of not caring about the estimated 17 million Americans, or including illegals for the purposes of reducing fraud, who are expected to be kicked off over the next 10 years. They're not doing it for the benefit of those people either. They are trying to exploit those people's dependency on government for their own political profit. And so they say, the one big beautiful bill is going to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion over the next 10 years. You have to cut spending everywhere. Now the argument is going to be, why do we spend on this versus that? For everybody complaining about the $1 trillion that's going to be cut from Medicaid over the next 10 years, how many of them supported squandering and laundering billions in Ukraine? No, good to squander there, but then, hey, don't take away from us here. So let's just keep spending, and keep supporting proxy wars, and then use whatever threat to reduce the size of the federal government by pleading in the name of the vulnerable, who they couldn't care less about either. Or some of the other things about the big, beautiful bill. Hold on a second here. You try to understand what the adversary is saying. So you have to go to the New York Times. Here we go. The ugliness of the bill. How bad is this bill? The answer in 10 charts. By the way, I might have stumbled across one of the only former New York Times journalists who may have seen the light. New York Times, with unusual speed and despite an armada of controversial provisions, Congress has birthed a sprawling, nearly 900-page policy stuffed with hundreds of changes that will bestow trillions of dollars in tax cuts on the rich and special interests, while slicing deeply into social programs relied on by millions of Americans. Much like Trump's 2017 tax bill, it will add substantially to the deficit with the debt without providing any meaningful impetus to economic growth. Well, it's interesting. At least they're fleshing out the argument that Barnes has been talking about for some time now, which is increasing deficit is not necessarily the end of the world if it also stimulates growth. One would argue that the tax breaks, the immediate tax breaks in the big, beautiful bill for bringing back manufacturing, from what I understand for infrastructure costs, will have an immediate net benefit on growth domestically, and will wean America off of dependence on foreign and sometimes hostile countries for manufacturing. Apparently, there's a provision that for developing infrastructure for manufacturing at home, there's going to be immediate tax breaks instead of having to amortize those costs off over years, which is going to be an amazing impetus and incentive to bring manufacturing back home and stimulate growth back home. We'll see. New York Times says, but this time it will be much worse. This legislation will pile about $3 trillion onto the deficit over the next 10 years, double the amount of its predecessor was expected to generate, and it lacks provisions that could significantly boost economic growth. Let's go down here. Millions lose access to Medicaid. Let's see this here. Work requirements, 31%. How the bill would reduce Medicaid spending by creating work requirements. There was a provision of rooting out the fraud. The biggest, most damaging cuts are those to Medicaid, cuts that got only more draconian as the bill moved from the House to the Senate. About a third of the savings come from imposition of a work requirement on recipients. While Republicans claim they are only attacking waste, fraud, and abuse, the resulting paperwork to comply with the requirement is expected to daunt many and result in lost coverage. This is their purported concern. All told, these changes could cost over 10 million Americans their health care, according to Congressional Budget Office. Costs of college will soar. What climate change, clean energy investments announced since the Inflation Reduction? The bill rolls back many of the clean energy tax incentives and investments created by the 2022 Inflation Reduction Act, throwing a major roadblock in the way of combating climate change. This is how they've institutionalized the climate crisis. Trump's biggest budget buster. The package adds to our national debt in a way that dwarfs any other packages passed in the 8 years since Trump first took office. His signature 2017 tax cut added a relatively modest $1.5 trillion over 10 years, but it did so by scheduling some of its provisions to expire after 8 years, thereby setting the stage for the current legislation, which makes those changes permanent. The bill uses the same gimmick with some of its tax breaks to help keep costs down. And the reality is the spending is objective. And then the only question is it a necessary evil to solidify the tax breaks that Trump was talking about? Is it a necessary evil to stimulate growth? Is it a necessary evil to pass whatever procedural hurdle came with this reconciliation budget and it'll be, better off in the future? We'll see. The one thing I do very much agree with that Robert Barnes said that's quite insightful is that this will free up Trump for domestic international policy now, that he will not have people holding over his head like a sword of Damocles, the one big beautiful bill, and their support for it, because fairly certain that J.D. Vance tie-break vote, one big beautiful bill. I'm fairly certain Vance breaks the 50-50 tie as Senate passes GOP mega bill. So this was as tight as it could get, and J.D. Vance broke the tie and passed the bill. 5 o'clock, it will be signed. All right.